Look, there are monster stories in every single culture on Earth, and I do not mean fairy tales here.
I am referring to real reports, real witnesses, facts that researchers cannot really dismiss. This is a wild statistic. We have hardly identified 14% of all the species on Earth, and that leaves 86% to go somewhere, hidden, waiting. Think about that for a second. Tonight, somewhere on the globe, one will see the light eyes in the dark. A farmer will find his farm animals with all the blood sucked out of them. A hiker will hear his or her footsteps being followed by other hikers, and the footsteps will be placed at the same time when they cease. The wilderness has secrets, and some of those secrets, they have teeth. So buckle up. We are going to plunge into 8 mythical animals that may be real. Let's go. 1. Mothman. So we'll start from November 1966 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It is a nighttime scene as the two young couples are cruising and they pass this old abandoned TNT plant. Then they behold a scene of something by the road. Initially, they believe that it is someone. However, then this thing changes, and it has these huge wings lying strapped over its back. Worse, 2 giant glowing red eyes. Not reflecting light, in fact, glowing, like brake lights in the dark. The driver loses his head and goes on the floor. On these back roads, they reached 100 miles per hour. And you know what? This thing keeps up with them. Wings were suddenly spread, easily 10 feet, frondling behind their car like it. Here's where it gets wild. The following year, this same creature was viewed by over 100 people, workers of the factory, policemen, ordinary families. The description of the same thing is done by everyone. Big wings, gray body, those red, spooky eyes. The story is published in the local newspaper. They are all calling it Mothman. Then, December 15th, 1967 happened. Rush hour. Cars are crammed on the Silver Bridge that links West Virginia and Ohio. And at 5:04 p.m., the entire thing simply falls in the freezing Ohio River. 46 of them get killed. It is the largest bridge disaster in U.S. history. But here's the creepy part. Just before the collapse, Mothman sightings became insane. People saw it near the bridge, on the bridge, as it knew a bad thing was going on. According to the skeptics, it was most likely to have been big birds, probably sandhill cranes or owls. But here's the thing. Cranes can't fly 100 miles per hour, and owls don't glow. Plus that timing, way too perfect. Visit Point Pleasant nowadays and interview people who were there in the 60s. You'll see it in their faces. They know what they saw, and are nightly watching the skies. 2. Chupacabra, Puerto Rico, March 1995. 8 of his sheep are dead and discovered by a farmer. No signs of a fight, just small puncture wounds. And here is the frightening thing. All the blood has been taken away, completely drained. In weeks, it is becoming commonplace. Goats and chicken and cattle, all discovered in a similar manner. The farmers are completely terrified. Others are forsaking their hearth. Then this woman, Madeline Tolentino, does see one. She writes about something that was like a nightmare. It is 4 feet in height and gray-skinned, and with enormous black eyes and with spines down its back. Going along in this queer, jumpy fashion, the media takes a frenzy and refers to it as El Chupacabra, literally the goat sucker. Pretty soon it's spreading. Mexico reports it. Texas, California, Florida, all bled to death, hundreds of dead animals. Most of the Chupacabra appearances have been traced to coyotes and foxes that have mange, which distorts their look. This is, however, not consistent with the initial descriptions, including the one by Tolentino of a 2-legged animal. There is also the blood drainage mode of certain animal attacks, which seems too neat and professional to be an activity of scavengers. Although there is doubt as to whether Tolentino was possibly influenced by a film, South American ranchers still are reporting cases of animals that were drained. This creates doubts in the fact that there is an animal that can hunt at night and vanish quickly, implying that the phenomenon is not restricted to ill animals. 3rd, Wendigo. All right, this one's dark. The Algonquian people of the North Forests had a clue of the frightening nature of human beings. Some people decide the unthinkable when they are starving in the midst of a fierce winter when there is literally no food left. They cannibalize human flesh in order to live. And as the legend says, it is the Wendigo that takes you then. It starts as a possession, this hunger that you can never satiate however big your meal is. You grow gaunt, skeletal, your visions draw in, then begins to grow. 10 feet high, 15, 20. And here's the twisted part. The bigger you eat, the bigger you become, but you're always starving. Your hunger increases faster than your body. The Wendigo is described by people as a skeletal figure with matted hair covered in heart of ice and moves around by use of winter storms. Indigenous records give examples of Wendigo psychosis. Individuals became violent and cannibalistic in the cases perhaps to discourage cannibalism within the culture. The old people tell stories of hunters coming back different and whole villages being swept away and voices in snows. The idea of Wendigo is frequently used by the contemporary media and is the point of concern among many indigenous people since it reflects more profound ideas of inner darkness, greed, and consequences of colonialism and capitalism. The Wendigo is more than a myth in distant forest regions of the north. In remote areas, it is a living, haunting reality. 4. Skinwalker. So Navajos do not like to discuss these. Seriously, they talk about Yi Nald Lushi, which translates to in their culture, and it is even possible to get their attention, not to mention talking about it, but we call them skinwalkers. In Navajos, a skinwalker is simply a witch who has performed the most evil services that one could imagine, such as killing his or her own family member, and they in turn are granted the ability to become whatever animal they desire. Coyotes are said to be running on their hind legs, wolves whose eyes are sickly human, koozie deer that talk the dead folks. Freaky enough, right? However, afterward, there is Skinwalker Ranch. It is an actual location, 512 acres on the Uinta Basin in Utah, and it is fundamentally ground zero to bizarre paranormal. The Sherman family bought it in 1994. Seemed like a nice property. Within months, absolute chaos. Cattle being mutilated in a surgical way, lousy balls drifting over their fields, animals that they were unable to recognize, such as this giant wolf that preyed on their cows. Terry Sherman fired many times at point-blank range at this wolf. The thing simply stared at him and moved. No blood, no wounds, nothing. They are experiencing unexplainable air tricks and regular machinery malfunctions in a ranch, and hence past owners have sold the land. It is purchased by billionaire Robert Bigelow to study the paranormal and chronicles many odd phenomena, which result in a show on the History Channel named The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Skeptics explain the happenings by the erroneous identification of military planes, and the Ute tribe, which is situated adjacent to the region, forecasts a curse, and the Navajo tribe shares the same view. This would either imply that there is a common delusion, or it is actually becoming hostile to something on the property, which is proving to be more and more hostile with more and more investigations. 5. Jersey Devil. Well, the myth is as follows. In 1735, this was the case as this woman called Mother Leeds was pregnant with the 13th child. She is tired, penniless, simply fed up with it all. When she is in pure frustration, she curses the baby. Let this one be the devil. The infant is born during a stormy night. At first, it looks normal, then it starts transforming. Bat wings tear through its back, face is stretched out into this horse-like snout with fangs, hooves to its feet, forked tail, etc. The creature kills its midwife, kills its own family, and flies as the chimney soaring into the Pine Barrens, where all this time it ought to have been hiding. That is the haunted folkloresque. But this is what did take place. January 1909. This is what people begin to refer to as the week the devil walked. Thousands of individuals in the states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania report sighting of this winged animal. And we're not talking about 1 or 2 sightings. Hoofprints appear in the snow across multiple towns, on the ground, on rooftops. How does that even work? In the Pine Barrens, a trolley car is assaulted by an unknown winged being, and this causes a lockdown in the region. Despite the fact that the number of sightings is reducing and life goes back to normal, the Jersey Devil legend continues, and there is still the occasional report of strange screams and weird sightings. There is skepticism over these events, which are attributed to hoaxes or large birds, but in 1909 there were inexplicable hoofprints over a 100-mile territory overnight, which begs the question as to their cause. The thickness and seclusion of the Pine Barrens happens to create a perfect habitat of such a cryptid, which makes the residents warn about exploring the state at night. 6. Yeti. The Himalayas, the highest mountains on the earth, and the local Sherpa people and Tibetans have been discussing the Mato Kangmi centuries long. Westerners refer to it as the Yeti or the Abominable Snowman. These gigantic footprints in the snow continued to be discovered by explorers at absurd altitudes. Wrong-looking human footprints, too big, too wide. This well-renowned mountaineer, Eric Shipton, captures a crystal-clear image of a footprint on a glacier in 1951. It's 13 inches long. He uses his ice axe to compare it. The photograph is the starting point of decades of expeditions. Even Edmund Hillary, the first man to make an ascent on Everest, searches after it. The legend grows. A 8-foot ape man, dressed in reddish-brown fur, inhabiting the death zone where humans can scarcely breathe. But then there is 2017 and it all goes wrong. Scientists collect 24 samples which people had reportedly found as evidence of Yeti. Bones, hair, teeth, even poop. They run DNA tests on all of it. Analysis of samples of Himalayas reveals that the Yeti is probably simply bears or Himalayan brown bears and Tibetan blue bears. Of interest, a recognition of a famous Yeti head was as a Himalayan goat, and supposed giant footprints are probably bear tracks disfigured by nature. Nevertheless, the huge and mostly untrodden area of the Himalayas could still have some unknown species, and the local Sherpas insist that Yeti is not bears. They claim the Yeti and bears are completely different animals, and there might be more about the legend than science can establish. This can be compared to the discovery of the giant panda, which was only recognized as a myth until the late 19th century, in which it is possible that certain legends may be developed before science can prove their truth. 7. Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness in Scotland. It's 22 miles long and 750 feet deep. The water was dark, muddy, and frozen. Honestly, that is the ideal hiding place of a monster. After 1,500 years, the local folklore has been discussing the creatures in the loch. However, the Nessie mania in the modern world begins in 1933 when they complete construction of a road over the water that allows everyone to have a clear view of the water. Suddenly, sightings explode. Individuals hear a long neck breaking the surface, a massive humped back, something immense flowing against the stream. This photograph is then captured by this London surgeon called Robert Kenneth Wilson in April 1934. You've definitely seen it, that crumbly picture of what appears to be a long-necked beast protruding out of the water. The surgeon photograph turns out to be the most well-known cryptid image ever. Books get written, expeditions are launched, equipment used in sonar is dragged off. The photo is the holy grail of the Nessie evidence that has existed 60 years. Then 1994 rolls around. Guy is a man called Christian Sperling who literally is on his deathbed and admits, "Yeah, we faked it." He and a couple of friends made a toy submarine, attached a carved head to it, sailed it over the loch and photographed it. The surgeon was in on it. The Loch Ness still remains a mystery with regular sonar surveys of large and inexplicable mass, including a massive 1.5 meters wide sonar scan in 2011. Even though thousands of reported sightings are doubtful due to the fact that most of them are said to be the result of logs, wakes, or wishful thinking, the linking of Loch Ness to the ocean with the River Ness indicates that there might be marine animals entering the loch. The fact that the water is murky makes it hard to see, hence sonar is the primary detection tool. There were several places in Loch Ness which had not been visited, and even though the famous photos of the Loch Ness monster might have been false, the presence of unidentified creatures in its depths could not be eliminated. 8. Mongolian death worm. The Gobi Desert, a very unfriendly place on Earth. The nomadic pastoralists that dwell there talk of something known as the Olgoi Korkoi. In English, it is translated to intestine worm. Lovely, right? According to them, it is this 2 to 5 foot long, blood red, thick man-arm color creature. It dwells in the sand underground and only emerges during the hottest months. And get this, it is able to murder you even without beating you. As a legend, this thing can spit poisonous venom that literally eats your flesh and bones. Or it produces an electrical discharge so strong that it kills horses and people several feet away. If you actually touch it, you die instantly. The toxin is allegedly very strong. Back in the 1920s, Western explorers started hearing these stories. This famous paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews, who actually inspired Indiana Jones, talked to tons of locals, and they all refused to speak about it openly because they thought it brought bad luck. But all people were aware of the same description, same behavior. Thus, missions are sent there with ground-penetrating radar, and the Gobi is investigated. British teams, Czech teams, serious investigators. They find nothing. No specimens, no remains, no proof whatsoever. Skeptics estimate that it is most likely snakes that are being mistaken, perhaps death adders or worm lizards which inhabit the area, but neither of them is much true to the word. The Mongolian death worm, which is dubious in biological terms, does not have any similar creature in the animal kingdom with the ability to produce a lethal electric shock or a vast spray of acid. Nevertheless, a huge, mostly untapped Gobi desert may hold new species, as the recent discovery of the Saula has already demonstrated. Practical nomadic herders will always give the same description of the same animal in the same areas, which can be either real, elusive animal, or merely mythology. However, the herders still refuse to go to some regions because of the perceived threat caused by the creature, which depicts the ingrained cultural beliefs that are related to the environment. 8 creatures, thousands of witnesses, centuries of reports. We have only covered less than 5% of our oceans, yet even our darkest woods are unexplored. The Himalayas, the Gobi, the Pine Barrens, tremendous enigmas in the land. Each decade we find extinct species alive. Science has previously been mistaken. Well, perhaps these myths are only animals that we have not yet named. Or perhaps something abroad was taught the best survival. Stay hidden from humans. Someone is seeing something that cannot be explained somewhere at this point in time. Make sure to subscribe and comment if you have seen something like this in real life. And tonight you will lock up.
Sweet dreams.